afternoon, and welcome back to this week's episode of Since I Was Young, a podcast dedicated to all things Heart of Midlothian. Well, this week has been quite a week. Obviously, the build-up was towards the weekend's title-deciding fixture. Is it too early to say that? Perhaps, but we will dive into that between Hearts and Celtic at Tynecastle Park. Hearts obviously had an advantage and an opportunity to go 8 points clear of Celtic with a victory. However, Celtic could cut that gap significantly if they somehow managed to find a result. But like I say, we will speak about the events from Sunday lunchtime this week and look ahead to a tricky tie, I would suggest, away in Paisley against St Mirren in the midweek. At time of recording, this is Monday evening, so hopefully by the time you see this, the St Mirren tie will not be too far away. But as ever, folks, you can find all of our social media channels in the description down below. Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, we're across the lot. Find them all down there. Go over, give us a follow, let us know your thoughts, and tell us what you're thinking and how you're feeling right now, because I don't think I have ever seen or heard as much confidence from a Hearts fan base heading into a game against Celtic. Don't know about you, John. What did you think?
I was quite relaxed going in. I figured we had an opportunity, I think, to get something out of it. I'm always cautious, though, ahead of these kind of games because Celtic are such a talented team, even when they're not at their best. I think we saw 2 or 3 times through the game. There were a couple of chances they had, especially like in the second half, that came pretty close. And all of a sudden, if one of them goes in, then all of a sudden Celtic can just, snap into place and turn it back on. So I'm never all that confident going in. I think I had predicted sort of a really scrappy game and probably a 0-0 result or something adjacent to that. Because I did anticipate Celtic going out there looking to make a bit of a statement against us. It just never felt like it came. There were periods in the first half where they were, they looked the stronger side, but on the whole, they didn't do enough to win, and I feel like they knew that as well. They just didn't seem to have it about them.
Yeah, I think that's totally fair, and I again, like I said previously, we tend to start our sort of match reviews with thoughts on the starting 11s, and I think you could say more about the Celtic starting 11 than you could about the Hearts. Obviously, ours unchanged yet again, the 4-4-2 system being preferred by Derek McInnes, which is totally understandable because it's delivering results. Celtic, however, obviously they've already are without a few players, and in their European tie in midweek against Sturm Graz, they lost Cameron Carter-Vickers as well as Johnson and Iheanacho. So 3 you would call big players, and big presences probably a better word, all ruled out. They brought in youngsters Donovan and Dane Murray at the back, and young Johnny Kenny led the line for them up front. So it was a slightly inexperienced Celtic 11. However, they still had quality on there. Guys like Engels that cost more than the entire Hearts 11 when he was brought in. So, there's lots of things. And as I say, we'll touch on that as we go along. But it made sense for us not to change anything. And I think the Harry Milne at right midfield experiment is something that is becoming just more and more reliable. I know people would rather see, Kizarides on the left than maybe a Kurjota or a flying right winger on the other side, and we may well see that come January when Islam Chesnikov arrives. However, Harry Milne is doing a very, very good job out there just now, and obviously you've spoken previously about Stephen Kingsley at left back. I thought he was absolutely outstanding as well. A lot of the plaudits will go to the forwards for the game against Celtic and their output and their energy and their work rate and their pressing, etc. But defensively, I thought we were very sound when we needed to be, and that helps as well.
100%. Yeah, I think massive credit has to go to man of the match, Cammy Devlin, and to a slightly lesser extent, Benny Beningame, who I felt was kind of back to his best as well at the weekend there. Both those two, like if you've got those two defending higher up the park as well as they do, and frustrating players before they even get near our third, it makes the defence's job that much easier. And I think that it's all the different component parts working together that is making this side work the way it is. And we make mention of the same 4-4-2, the same starting 11. I think that's 5 games in a row now. That's happening for a reason, and it's because that 11 have been so effective. If that 11 wasn't up to scratch and wasn't doing the job, then they would be replaced, because we have replacement value on the bench in pretty much all those positions. It's the fact that 11 is working and that 11 is continuing to improve and get better together that they keep getting the call. So it's really no surprise that this is the 11 that's named at this point because they're earning it every week. Harry Milne
Yeah.
in right field it's turning into right midfield. Sorry, is turning into a just an inspired choice by Derek McInnes, and it's going to get to a point before too long where even when Islam Chesnikov comes in January, he's not going to be anywhere near guaranteed a spot in that right hand side because Jota is not. Um, there are others who are not. Alan Forrest is obviously a guy who has kind of been frozen out a bit in recent weeks because of the changes that have been made. None of these guys are able to get into the team on the right hand side. So Chestikov's going to have to join the queue because
Yeah.
Milne ain't going anywhere, and I don't think Kingsley is going anywhere either. He has made that left back position his own again after all these years. It's great to see him at his best. So um, it's one of those tricky ones, I guess, for a manager where like you have to balance people's playing time and the egos of a modern football player. But at the same time, those players are probably also on some level at least quite happy to wait because the club is winning football matches. It's like
Mhm.
you can't reasonably be like, well, I want to start because I don't get to start enough.
Yeah.
What they're doing right now is working, so everybody needs to be working towards that same end.
Oh, completely agree. And I mean, I think the tone was set very early. Obviously, Derek McInnes calling for fans before the game to get in early, and quotes along the lines of, if you've heard Tynecastle be loud, make it louder. If you've heard it be noisy, make it louder. Get behind them because the players need that. And Tynecastle can be an intimidating place if the atmosphere is ramped up like it is. Obviously, the Celtic allocation was cut once again to I think something like 650 tickets they got this time because the bottom end of the Roseburn was sectioned off for them. And yeah, listen, the atmosphere was electric, and you could tell there was a bit of confidence. And I know, like I said at the start of the show, I've never known such confidence from a Hearts support, but everybody I asked said, you know what, we've nothing to fear. Let's have a go at them, including you and I last week when we spoke about the Celtic game. But there was, as the week progressed from when we recorded to the game itself, there were a few nerves that cropped up in my head and thinking, this is still Celtic. We can't underestimate them. But we're in good form at the moment. They are shaky at the moment, I think it's fair to say, and with the changes to their 11 that they had to make, it was a game that just felt like, do you know what, this could be a game that we could win. And I think the the way that we set out right from the start, and I noticed that at the kickoff, the kickoff was taken and the ball was played straight into the Celtic half, and our forwards were just on the Celtic defenders from the first minute, and that intensity is what you need in a game like that, especially you've got to capitalise on that atmosphere as well.
Yeah, absolutely. We talked about the atmosphere, especially last week, and how it could work in our favour, but it could also work against Celtic. We had talked about how if we had somehow managed to get ahead early on, that the Celtic fans would not take that well. Like they would have been getting pelters from their fans. They would have started to potentially feel the pressure between them, and certainly the guys in the Celtic technical area, they're already under quite a bit of pressure, I think, and that would have put further stress on them if we could somehow grab an early goal. We managed to do that, albeit not in the ideal fashion, but I think that played out exactly as we had kind of suggested it might, because although they did equalise fairly quickly, I think that early goal that we scored stayed in the back of their heads for the majority of the game. Because even when they did start to find their feet, they never seemed sure of themselves. Not like a Celtic side that we've seen before. This doesn't seem like that invincible sort of mammoth that you often come up against. When even if Celtic do have a couple of poor results, you never feel fully confident in a game. But there was something different this time, just like there was something different at Ibrox. It felt like we had a chance to do something in that game, even when they did equalise. And how many times have we seen it where we might grab a goal and then Celtic just turn on, the boosters, and all of a sudden the 4-1 up before you realise what's happened. It's like that's the level of talent that we're dealing with, and that's the level of resources that we're dealing with. We'll talk about
Yeah,
sort of comments regarding the teams and stuff like that later in the podcast, but yeah, it was not not a particularly scary atmosphere for Hearts fans. It felt like a very jovial and positive atmosphere for Hearts fans, but it felt like an environment that Celtic were not prepared for.
Yeah, completely agree. And I
I would
think
like to. I would like to add before we go any further that I am recovering from the flu. So, folks, if you're listening to this and I'm wheezing away or like struggling, I do apologise, but I'm recovering from flu that I had over the weekend.
oh, you're absolutely fine, mate. You're absolutely fine. I'm just delighted that you're here to talk to us about this because I wouldn't want to sit in my own room and talk to myself. It's nice to have it's nice to have somebody to bounce it off of, especially the way things are going at the moment. But to talk about the game and to talk about the start, you mentioned the fast start and getting a goal in front, and obviously we did that thanks to Dane Murray's fantastic finish. I felt quite sorry for Claudio Braga
Yeah.
because that header and the Kasper Schmeichel save was fantastic. I've always rated Kasper Schmeichel as a goalkeeper, and when he went to Celtic, I was a bit like, oh fuck, I can't like him anymore. But
See,
he makes it.
I will be honest. I unabashedly love Kasper Schmeichel. As you know, I idolised his dad growing
Yeah,
up. Like he was the reason that I was a goalkeeper growing up, and the main reason that I followed Man United. So, like, yes, he plays for Celtic, but there is that is like a. I'm never going to not admire Kasper Schmeichel openly
yeah,
for that reason. It's just like I loved his dad so much, man. Like so,
yeah.
when I
What?
saw him come through and stuff, it was like, ah, man, this is great to see. Like his old man, it was so
I
good,
think,
and it's good to see him back in the game as well. But
yeah,
sorry,
I think
if you
it's
want to continue.
No, I was just going to say, like, just a quick one before I go back to my point. I think it's the Peter Schmeichel being a legendary goalkeeper and then his son going on to be a goalkeeper as well. It would have been interesting if
Mm-hmm.
his son had been an outfield player, but the fact that he's a goalkeeper as
Yeah,
well, it kind of adds to it a little bit. But yeah, I did. I felt quite bad for Braga because he gets a brilliant header on the ball and Schmeichel just makes a brilliant save. But Shankland, and I'll talk about Shankland, his contribution as we go along, but he was in the perfect place to hook the ball back across the goal. And like I say, Dane Murray, it's a brilliant finish, a fantastic finish to be honest. Slices it into the back of his own net, and I think I don't really know what he was trying to do, whether he was trying to put it out for a corner or whether he was trying to just get rid of it, but he just sliced it into the middle of the air. And yeah, it went in the back of the net to give us a lead. And I think, albeit an own goal, it was deserved.
I would say so. Yeah, the pressure that Hearts put on and that kind of rebound opportunity that Shanklin jumped on, as you say, that's something that we've been missing in recent seasons quite a few times. Is that the hunger to get in about that, to crash the net, to use a hockey term? Like we're not given the defence space to breathe. We're not given the defence the option to sort of play the ball out, and that can make a mistake happen, which is what happened there. Like we forced him into a mistake because we ended up with nowhere to put the ball when that second attempt came in so quickly. Like the low ball into the 6 yarder is such a difficult thing to defend, and when it comes in that quickly after the save, Schmeichel is completely unprepared for the rebound, and the defence hasn't had a chance to regroup yet. Fantastic work by everyone involved, really, from a Heart standpoint, and yeah, definitely a deserved finish. It was deserved in terms of the chances we had created up to that point as well. Like we were all over them for a bit there. A really good spell. That opening, the opening minutes were pretty much all Hearts. It seemed like.
Yeah, completely agree. And then the frustrating thing, obviously, you go 1-0 up and we're sort of saying, right, we need to hang on to this and try and build on it. And then Celtic use their experience, use their intelligence to just sort of kill the momentum a little bit of the game. They just kept the ball for a good few minutes and passed it amongst themselves and sort of slowed it down. And obviously, the Tynecastle atmosphere, it was buzzing, obviously, with the early goal and all that. And this is what Celtic have, and this is that sort of nous and that experience to say, right, we're just going to keep the ball for a little bit and just kill it. And they did that. Didn't help that we kind of stood off them a little bit. It was the first time I can sort of remember Callum McGregor getting on the ball and just kind of picking passes and dictating it a bit, which we always said was going to be the key for Celtic in this game. But they, as much as I don't like to say it, they put together quite a good move to get an equaliser from that man, Callum McGregor. They just passed it from side to side and we didn't get anybody near it. Lots of opportunities to press that we didn't do, which is a bit frustrating, but it is what it is. Celtic with their one-touch passes, their two-touch passes, and getting it through us, and a tidy finish from Callum McGregor. Would you agree?
So I'm going to choose to instead put something, a positive spin on it from a Hearts standpoint. Yes, it was a tidy finish from Callum McGregor, but I think that that goal actually shows just how impressive the overall Hearts performance was. Celtic are quite capable of doing that at any time. We've seen them dominate games in that way before. It's not unusual for Celtic to score 3 or 4 goals in just that fashion when they need to. We prevented them from being able to do that. I felt that we won a lot of the midfield battles. I felt that our defence was very strong. Alexander Shvolov finally conceded a goal, granted, but I thought that he stepped up on a couple of occasions as well and looked quite composed over the whole. So yeah, that goal, very impressive, nice build up, but that shows the quality you're dealing with when you play against Celtic. And that ended up being the only such instance of quality in the entire game. Hearts did a fantastic job outside of that of stemming that kind of momentum for them. Yes, that goal killed our momentum for a bit, but we were able to cut their momentum off at the pass as well, and they never really got anywhere near that level again the rest of the game.
Yeah, I think you're right in that front. Like Celtic do have the ability to cut you open if you let them play it round you, and I think there was an element of that. But they had one other chance before the end of the first half, and it was the boy Nygren, I think is how you pronounce it, the Norwegian boy, and it forces Alex Shvolov to make a brilliant save. It was Shvolov's goal kick that was, or I can't remember if it was a goal kick or a clearance, but he sort of lumped it straight into the Celtic players and they just worked it forward. And Nygren had an opportunity, but Shvolov atoned for his error and sort of put a big strong hand up and got rid of it. I think that's the one, like we spoke about Alex Shvolov last week, I think it was, or the week prior, and I kind of
I've been
talked about
talking about
this.
Shvolov for several weeks. I think
Yeah,
I'm
yeah,
very fond.
yeah.
I'm very fond of Alexander Shvolov as a goalkeeper.
Yeah, he's certainly. I think particularly against Celtic, I think that was the game that I sort of, because jokingly over the last few weeks I've kind of been saying we don't actually know if this guy's any good or not because he's not really had anything to do, but he had a few things to do against Celtic, and that save most notably was a big part. When I watched the game, I initially thought it was a defender that got a block on it, but obviously when you see the angle and Shvolov just gets a strong, I think it was his right hand up to it and he just puts it away. Because again, that could have been a Celtic goal, and then if we go 2-1 down, it's a different game. But that influence in that moment was massive for him. And then obviously, I will say, we started the game well in terms of the opening 45. I think we started it well, and then Celtic did kind of take an element of control and start moving it around. But by the end of half time, I think we would have been the side going in and going, can we play another 10 minutes? Because we'd found our feet again and we'd sort of started to create things again and move the ball forward again, and then half time comes along. So balance of play. I think at half time you're looking at a draw and going, do you know what? It was a mad 4 minutes between the goals, but it had been quite an even first half. Would you agree with that?
I would say so. Yeah, it did certainly feel like Celtic really struggled out of the blocks to start the game. Hearts tried to take advantage of that and eventually managed to get something out of it. Celtic did wake up, it seemed like, with that moment of quality that we talked about, but never really went anywhere else with it. Like they didn't really, like I say, like we managed to sort of cut that momentum off at the pass defensively. And so it kind of became a bit of a seesaw battle for the rest of the first half. In terms of the second half, though, it felt like Celtic just never got like it feels like 11 guys who've never played professional football before came out of the tunnel at the start of the second half, or it was like some kind of invasion of the body snatcher situation where like they just didn't switch on in the second half at all. It felt like to me they had a couple of chances, but they were from distance, and they have too much quality to miss those when they've got that kind of space. Like they were dragging shots wide that you would expect of players that are paid as much as their kind of forward line are, players that they've paid in some cases upwards of like 5-6 million quid to buy. Like you're dragging these shots wide from distance without too much pressure on you at all. They weren't all that impressive in the second half at all, I must admit.
No, I'm with you there, and I think for as decent as they were in the first half, I think you're absolutely right. The second half, I think they just kind of didn't bother. For whatever reason, their passing was most unlike Celtic, and they just kept sort of losing it and giving it back to us, which was obviously most welcome. But of course, the second half began with Alexandros Kiziridis, the Greek, once again making an impact, cutting in from that left hand side as he loves to do. When he's 30 yards out, everyone's shouting for him to shoot because they're thinking he's going to shape it in the top corner, but he just keeps the head and puts it in the opposite corner, the bottom left, I think it was. He chose to go
Yeah.
near post rather than the far post. They spoke to him after the game about that, and he said, I saw the goalkeeper go to his right because I think he thought I was going to go there because that's where I always go. And he said, but I just decided just to put it the other way because the goalkeeper wasn't getting there. Kasper Schmeichel's totally unsighted. Again, Dane Murray gets a shout out for stepping out of the way. I think he must have had hearts on his coupon or something for the man to be involved in as many of the goals as he was. But yeah, it was such a well hit shot from Kiziridis, and I think it caught them all out. The build up to it was pretty good as well. Milne has it over on the right hand side and cuts infield, sort of becomes that central midfield option, lays it into Braga, the ball finds Kiziridis, and then he does the rest. Listen, this guy, long-term listeners of this podcast, and in fact, just listeners in general, will know that I love a nippy winger that takes people on and gets you off your seat. That's what I love, and those are players that I've loved to watch for as long as I've been watching football. And Kiziridis has that. He's got that X factor, that player that you can give the ball to and he's going to do something. Jimmy Sanderson continually said it in commentary, that he just gets you off your seat. And that goal coming at that point was important, I think, because the longer the game went at 1-1, maybe Celtic could have grown back into the game, but we had to take that initiative and we had to go for it and go for them. And I think to score that early in the second half, it was only after about, I think it was 52 minutes or something like that. So it made a massive difference, and it kind of, again, lifted the roof off Tynecastle.
Yeah, I mean, like Kiziridis has so many tools to work with. He's very technically gifted. He works really well breaking in from cutting in from the left hand side. Like people had assumed he was going to try and aim it top right, like he kind of tends to do. But he has something that you and I have talked extensively about previously, which is that football IQ. He might see just the smallest wee kind of gap that someone has left. He's very good, I think, at exploiting mistakes. Kiziridis, we saw it last week with the way that he pressed. I think it was for the third. Was it the third goal? The way that he pressed for the third goal last week.
Yeah.
He is very good at reading the game and reading his opposition. He's very good at reading mistakes, and he takes advantage of them. He's got the technical ability to do that. Like Kasper Schmeichel does go slightly to his left, and he's left that slightest of gaps. It's very difficult to save that once it's been struck with the pace that and the placement that Kiziridis has gotten on the ball. With regards to Murray, I think he has maybe misread the spin. I don't think it was necessarily that he was getting out of the way, but I think he kind of misread the spin on the ball. Like I say, it was struck quite ferociously, so I think he can be slightly forgiven for that. Maybe not by Kasper Schmeichel or the rest of his Celtic teammates, because the poor boy had an absolute nightmare. Pardon me. Just an overall very well worked goal, and like you say, it's not just Kiziridis that's involved there. Like Milne did a fantastic job cutting in from the right hand side, manages to play in Braga, and Braga, showing his intelligence, he leaves it to Kiziridis to do his thing. Those two guys have such a great working relationship, it seems like already. They understand each other almost like psychically, it's like they have that simpatico going on, and it's fantastic to watch these guys at work. And some of the goals that we're seeing from Kiziridis early on in the season are just wonderful to see.
Yeah, and I think talking about Braga as well, obviously his involvement in the penalty was obviously massive. But Braga is like, Kiziridis is a nightmare because he's electric and he's got that X factor. Braga is a nightmare because he never leaves you alone. He's always just there. He's always buzzing around. He's like a Cammy Devlin, but up front. That's kind of how I would put it. Cammy Devlin, I'll speak about him after because we haven't mentioned him enough yet. But Braga was sensational all day. He's not going to be a player that scores a goal every week, but to me, he comes across as the sort that will get you a goal when you need one, or he'll be involved in a goal when you need it, like an important moment. He's always just around. He's always doing something. He's always either creating space, or a lot of the game he was pressing on Callum McGregor. He was, pressing the Celtic centre halves to try and nick the ball or try and force them into playing it long, which is what they had to do quite a lot because we just cut off every other option for them, which was a clearly tactical instruction. So Derek McInnes deserves a huge amount of credit for that as well. I don't think enough has been given to Derek McInnes, to be honest with you. I think a lot of the praise and credit has come, to other angles, be it the Tony Bloom investment, etc. But we'll talk about that in a moment. But Braga penalty, again, it's that man Dane Murray, man of the match. He puts a foot in, does not need to. Claudio Braga does go down somewhat dramatically, which I don't know how to feel. But there was enough contact, and Braga does go down with justifiable reason to go down. It's not a dive, it's not a simulation. Braga doing what Braga does, just being a pest. And Lauren Shankland, on his 150th appearance for Hearts, steps up to take the penalty. I love a penalty when the scorer puts it the same way the goalkeeper goes. We've obviously spoken about goalkeepers in this week's episode with Schwallow and Schmeichel, but there was nothing that Schmeichel could do. He goes the right way, but it's just in the corner. And I think as well, like when Shankland's taking the run up, he's looking where he's going to put it. He's basically telling Schmeichel where it's going. But he manages to get it in, and it was his 76th goal in 150 appearances, which is it's quite a record at the moment, isn't it?
Yeah, that's a better than 1 and 2 record scoring at Hearts. I don't show me the last guy that had that kind of numbers at over 150 or more appearances. Outstanding. Where would we be if not for Lawrence Shankland right now? He has been such a key figure and such an iconic part of the Hearts system the last few years. And the fact of the matter is we have played numerous different systems in that time. He has been central to all of them, and I think it's just a testament to how special a player he is and what a great signing he was when he came to Hearts. The notion of anyone doubting Lawrence Shankland is just preposterous to me at this point.
Yep. Me too. Yep, me as well. Yep. I never doubted him for a minute.
All joking aside, though, to be serious, though, what a player he is, and he enjoys the goals against Celtic, but notable, I felt after the penalty, he wasn't jumping around and making a show of it. He celebrated. He was very happy to have scored. He was straight back down that pitch, and it was back to business. The man is such a professional on that pitch, and like we've talked about, it's great that he now has outlets outside of himself that he can rely on, because it means that he can do his job to an even higher standard. And I do think that overall we're seeing that. He had a couple of really nice touches outside of the penalty. It wasn't just the penalty. He was involved in the opening goal as well.
Yeah.
Just a special heart striker, and I'm just thrilled that we get to keep seeing him for the next 3 years.
Oh, completely. And I think, as the second half wore on, there was a few little moments here and there, but it was scrappy from Celtic, and we just kind of plodded along because at 3-1, you're thinking, right, this game is I'm not going to say it's done because you never know, and obviously if Celtic managed to get a second goal, then it would have been back on again. But you could tell there was an element of sort of confidence and just belief in the Hearts team, and they stayed in their shape, they stayed in their system. We saw a cameo from Agu. He got back in the park following his layoff after his last cameo against Livingston. He was unlucky not to get one towards the end as well. Good yes. Shot, but just didn't quite have enough on it. In terms of other chances, we had a Claudio Braga snapshot that Kasper Schmeichel kind of held pretty comfortably. Celtic changed their entire front three, bringing on Yamada, Balikishwa and the lesser Forest. And they made absolutely no difference whatsoever. I thought, and this is the one thing I'll say about Celtic from the game. For everyone that talks about the Hearts set pieces and how good and efficient we are from them, Celtic's delivery all day was horrendous, absolutely horrific. And for whatever reason, I don't. I think I said it last week, or maybe not on here, but maybe in conversations with other people. This Celtic team to me just don't have that fear factor of previous sides, and I think we capitalised on that. I think it was a big, big game, and we turned up. And I'm not saying Celtic didn't turn up, but we just turned up in a way that it's so nice to see and so unusual to see. And I think this is the thing. This is the efficiency. This is the confidence, and we're not being flashy because we don't have to be. We're being efficient and we're taking chances when we get them. And I think, you know, I don't know if you had anything else from the 90 minutes. I mean, I'm going to talk about Cammy Devlin, but did you have anything that you wanted to point out specifically?
I think we've more or less covered it. Yeah. The one thing, the only other incident that I would really bring up was involving Kevin Devlin. He was challenged from behind late on in a tackle that could well have broken his fucking back. That I feel like there was an argument for a straight red in that instance. That
Yeah,
was a shocking tackle. He could have broken his neck. I've seen
yeah,
hockey players have their necks broken on similar hits on a hockey game in hockey games on the ice. He's not facing you. You come up behind him and you fucking spear him in the back. The way that Cammy Devlin landed, I was quite concerned watching it. Like, I hope he's going to be all right after that. That was an absolutely ridiculous challenge. Um,
yeah,
but Devlin showing, once again his quality. He was just 100% effort from minute 1 to minute 90. What a player. And I'll say it again, and I'm going to use both hands this time. Pay the man. Get him signed up. Why is it taking so long?
yeah. It's Cammy was outstanding. He won man of the match. He was everywhere, and I think when the one sort of thought that I had when I saw the lineups was that Cammy and Benny against the three-man midfield of Celtic, and I thought, yes, Celtic are off colour a little bit, but there's Engels, Hatate, and McGregor in the midfield three, and I thought, if they click and if they're on form, that could be a very big challenge for Cammy and Benny to handle. But the two of
Nah,
them, the two of
nah.
them have just got back to that partnership that they were
Yes.
when they first got paired together,
Yeah.
and it's so nice to see. And I mean, Cammy was at his absolute shithousery best from minute 1 to minute 90. I counted lots of things, exactly the stroking of Dane Murray's face, the patting him on the back, and
Aye.
just the general winding up of Callum McGregor as well. That moment
Oh,
just
McGregor looked
prior
like he
to
was on the
the
verge of a nervous breakdown by the end of the game, mate.
it
Honestly,
was
Devlin does his job so well in that sense. He
it
is
was
so good
prior
at
to the
winding folk
sorry.
up and frustrating them.
Yeah, well, it was prior to that, and the one point that we didn't mention from the game actually that I'll bring up now was the Zaliukas tribute on the 26th minute.
Yes.
Obviously, Cammy Devlin and Callum McGregor. Callum McGregor goes charging into the back of Devlin and knocks him over, and Cammy gets up, and there's a little bit of handbags around that particular minute. And Cammy, Callum McGregor's just being a little naff and shouting at him, and Cammy Devlin's just standing there with the biggest smile on his face, and I just love that. It's like
Yeah.
he doesn't rise to it; he just pokes it and just stands and smiles at you. Which is just great. And I would hate to come up against Cammy Devlin because I would probably want to lump him, but at the same time, you look at his little happy face and you're just like, how can you do that? But he was absolutely outstanding. And like you say, a new contract surely has to be not too far away,
What's taking so
especially with
long?
especially with that rumored release clause. I think we have to try and get that one done as soon as possible,
Yeah.
because he is putting up numbers that are up there with the best midfielders in the league at what they do. And
Yeah.
like I said before, it's not glamorous, but what Cammy does is massive to how we want to play, and it's having him on form and having him doing what he's doing is a huge part of why we are where we are. Um, you spoke about Shanklin briefly, so I'll throw a couple of thoughts in there. I think it was one of the best performances from Lawrence Shankland I've seen in a long time. His off the ball work was fantastic. His ability to lead that line, that pressing and sort of he was going, he was taking people with him, and he just put in so much work. And I think for a guy that gets got a lot of stick, with the whole, he's put on a few pounds over the summer, etc. Last season, to be fair, this season he looks like him and Craig Halkett have been doing the same fitness camp. But he puts in so much work, and I don't think people realise just how much running Lawrence Shankland actually does. But I thought he was brilliant against Celtic, and it just makes a difference. It's when you see your captain doing that, and you think, yeah, do you know what, this team is on it today.
Exactly. It's leading from the front and it's leading by example. And it's what we've talked about previously was like him performing at a high level makes everybody else perform at a higher level to meet him. Everybody else performing at a higher level, he's rising to that. When he's got better talent around him, he is rising to it and he's getting even better than that. And then they want to be at that level. We've talked about it quite a few times this year, and it's what is working so well for this particular lineup in this 4-4-2 system that we've settled on. It's
Yeah,
not by mistake. He has put in so much work over the summer. We saw the videos of him training separately while he was still a free agent. And I think was it Saudi Arabia the camp was in, or Dubai or somewhere.
yeah, something like that.
It was over in the Middle East somewhere, I think. And he was at that camp with his agency, I think it was, and he was putting in the shifts. And then as soon as he arrived in Spain, it was straight to work when he joined back up with his teammates. And he doesn't seem to have dropped off in any way or shape or form. In terms of the commitment levels, he still looks in great shape. It's the best shape this year that I think we've seen Shankland in any of his years at Hearts.
I would agree. I would agree.
His finishing has been better, and like you say, the sort of grunt work, he's doing so much of that, and he's managing to score goals at the same time. He's got that perfect balance sort of happening, and I do think that there's more still to come. He's going to become even more perfect, if that even makes sense. Like, we haven't really seen him yet go off on that run of scoring goals that we usually see, and we generally see that, to be fair, from Shankland around kind of January into sort of February time. It's not usually towards. It's more so towards the middle of the season that we tend to see him score in bunches. So
Yeah,
I think we probably still haven't seen the best of Shankland this year, which is quite scary because he has been phenomenal already, and his game is so diverse, and his fitness levels seem so much higher, and the talent that he's surrounded by is so much better that it's just, like I said earlier, it's just wonderful to see. Like, this is such a special player that we have. Like, you talk about generational talents at clubs. Lawrence Shankland is one of those. Like, we are so lucky to have a striker like him. He's doing things that haven't been done since John Robertson, and John Robertson's name is sacred. It's sacrosanct in Gorgie for a reason.
yeah.
Like, you don't get to be in exclusive company that includes such names as John Robertson and maybe Barney Battles, and then maybe not that many more players in Hearts history. Like, that's the sort of levels we're talking about in terms of consistency and scoring goals. So yeah, like, there's nothing much more needs to be said about it. Like, the start he's having is so great, and the
Completely.
responsibility that he takes from leading the club as captain now. Like I said last week or the week before, he feels like he's really grown into the role of captain. And Derek McInnes, actually, I don't remember if it was on Open Goal or if it was on something else that he did an interview recently. He was talking about how he normally doesn't like a forward to be his captain. He prefers it to be a defender or midfielder. But he sat down with Shanks and he spoke to him about the captaincy, and he came away convinced. I mean,
Yeah.
it's turned out to be the right decision, I think.
Oh, completely. I think it's interesting because Cammy Devlin made a point after the match, and we'll kind of go into the after-match reactions and such. Cammy was interviewed and he spoke about it because he came off, I think, with the armband on, or perhaps he had it last week. Maybe it was the Kelly game. He ended the game with the armband on. But Cammy made the point and basically said, he'd spoken to the manager about it before, and obviously has basically said, you don't have to have the armband on to be a leader. And I think that mentality and that attitude runs through that Hearts team, which is something that, again, we've not seen for so long. And I think, people that are new to this podcast and new to kind of Hearts in general, because obviously with how we're doing, it's gathering an audience, it's gathering people from outside looking in at Scottish football going, hang on a minute, what's going on over there? This Hearts team is completely different from last year. The night and day comparison is crazy. And Derek McInnes made a point about players that were at Hearts last season and they're still there now, their levels have gone up because these new guys have come in. And you spoke about that as well. The standards have risen, so these new guys have come in and made it that. But the guys that were here last year are all stepping up as well, even though they had a pretty crap season last year by all accounts. But the the full time whistle went at Tynecastle, and the atmosphere was absolutely buzzing. You know, the three stands all doing the Celtic huddle celebrations, the Celtic fans exiting quickly, Tony Bloom's name being sung, and the man himself sitting in the main stand clapping along, totally oblivious to what the fans are singing. I think he doesn't know the words to the Heart song yet, but I'm sure he'll get to know them. He's
He
walking
looked
down the
like he was
stand.
really enjoying himself though. Like it felt like this guy went to that game and came away with a feeling of validation, of vindication of the decision that he made to invest.
Completely.
He's probably seen what we've done so far in the season and been like, "This is really impressive. This is going to look really good on my CV." When it comes time to invest somewhere else, I can point at this and say, "Look at what I've done in Scotland." But when he went to that game, I think he came away with his eyes opened to just what that investment means to Hearts
Yeah,
fans and what the performance on the pitch means. And it felt like he got it. You know, like that's him. He gets it. It's like he's buying in, not just to
yeah,
investing in the board level or in the football department, but the culture at Hearts and what it actually means to Hearts fans to win. Like, because he would love to disrupt Scottish football and win a title with a team outside the old firm because it's a good challenge. But I feel like he came away from that game at Tynecastle feeling more sort of like, I would like Hearts to win a title for these supporters, for that atmosphere that I got to enjoy and experience at Tynecastle Park. I
yeah.
think
I
it
agree.
bodes well for potential future investments as well. Like if the Hearts board go to Tony Bloom and say, "Would you like to invest more money in a proper title push?" If we happen to be up there in January with a decent gap that we could maybe say, if we can do X, Y, and Z, we could shore up that gap and potentially even open it further. But if we don't do it, Celtic are going to spend, and we might end up losing that. He's probably going to be more, I think, inclined to agree to that sort of thing now, after experiencing what he experienced at Tynecastle, than he would have going in. It was great to see that. And sorry to go off on like a tangent for 2 minutes, almost three
No,
minutes
you're
about
right.
Tony Bloom and that, but I think it's a valid point to make. You know, like he was taking like photos with people and all that, and I was watching it going like that is so surreal to see because Tony Bloom, as we know, is not a guy who likes to make it about him. He's not a guy who likes attention. You know, it's probably quite unusual for him to be asked to take selfies with supporters and stuff. You saw that he was listening to people and he was shaking hands. Oftentimes you'll see these kind of types like kind of do a wee kind of wave and then up the fucking stairs they go and they're off up to the fancy seats of the fancy restaurant to drink some fucking champagne and eat caviar the rest of the day. Not Tony Bloom, man. He was loving it. He was having a
Yeah.
great time.
He was, and I think you're right in what you say about it sort of being that vindication of why he's chosen Hearts and why
Yeah,
he feels that it's doable and what his ultimate goal is achievable. Obviously, the Derek McInnes taglines came out again, the one game at a time. We're not getting carried away, but this is a great result, a great performance. And the thing that he said that struck me the most was that he feels we can improve, he feels we can get better, and that for me is massive. And as much as we've spoken about the game overall and Celtic not really being at the races, for Derek McInnes to come out and say that we can do better than that is quite something to hear. And just to sort of touch on the Tony Bloom thing before we move on to what Brendan Rodgers had to say, I think for me, the Tony Bloom investment and all the rest of it, this season so far has been special so far. We are currently 8 points clear at the top of the Premier League, which is unheard of. It's a stat that I saw on Sky earlier on was only one team this century, only one day, this century has a team outside of the old firm held an 8 point lead at any point. And that was also Hearts in 2005. You hear all these stats and figures being brought up because we're top of the table. Everybody's saying, "Oh, could they be the first team since Aberdeen to win the league, etc., etc." It's still incredibly early. I'm
yeah.
still trying to keep my feet
Aberdeen,
on the ground.
Aberdeen last year were being tipped around this time still as the
Yeah,
first team since Aberdeen to
this is
potentially do
it.
it. You know, it's one
This
of
is it.
those things where like teams come and go outside the Old Firm. Celtic, and to a lesser extent recently Rangers, they have the tools and are built to do it all year.
Yeah.
And if they need to, they can go and get where they need to quell the issues. But this is such a
But this
great
is
early example of, like, we went to that game riding on a high, but we didn't just, it wasn't a smash and grab. We
no.
looked like we belonged. So that makes you think we have the talent and the commitment levels to potentially do it. It's how do we handle the various challenges that will inevitably come. The Christmas schedule is going to bring with it injuries, suspensions, tired legs. How do we respond to those challenges? How do we respond to things that disrupt that excellent harmony that we have in our first 11 at the moment? That's what's going to decide whether or not we can potentially do it, not beating Celtic at Tynecastle. Although, what it does show is that we have the talent levels and the commitment levels, if everything goes to plan every week, to potentially do it. If
Yeah.
Celtic continue to struggle as well, though, there's so many different variables that are going to work
Well, that's
into
it.
it.
That's the thing, and I think I'll kind of I'll give you the Brendan Rodgers stuff because I think it's important to talk about it because he is rapidly losing, I think, a lot. To be honest, I think the Celtic board obviously haven't backed him in the summer for whatever reason. We don't know. It's not our business to know. But obviously, board have been the ones that have been in the firing line from the fans for a good few weeks now for simply not spending money in the summer, despite the fact that they did spend money. But Celtic fans believe they should spend more money. Some entitlement levels there, but Brendan Rodgers has been making some very interesting comments over the last few weeks about Ferraris and Honda Civics and Range Rover Sports and all this sort of stuff. I think he's telling us his Christmas list or whatever, but he, after the game, came out and said, and this was the quote was picked out. It was Celtic is a club whose DNA is about playing football and we'll never lose that. Hearts is totally different. It's a different DNA here. The ball is direct. The supporters love that. It's a second ball fight, set pieces. Celtic haven't become winners that way. Now, I heard that and it was said with, in my opinion, massive disrespect towards Hearts. I think it's I kind of equate it to English football because, again, that's easy to equate it to that. The Pep Guardiola Manchester City sides that, would turn up and, granted, would have considerably more money than everybody else, but they would come in and they would play with a certain DNA, a certain style, a certain, that Pep Guardiola football. Then you have the opposite end of the scale. You have a Stoke City, Tony Pulis or a Sean Dyche Burnley, these sorts of sides that don't play that way. If you get 3 points playing Sean Dyche football, doesn't matter. If you get 3 points playing Pep Guardiola football, doesn't matter. It's still 3 points. And ultimately, we're winning games of football playing how we're playing. And like I said earlier on, it's efficiency. It's taking chances when you get them and making the most of them. And that's what we're doing. Celtic, at this moment in time, look like a side that are missing an identity. They're missing that DNA. They don't, like I said earlier, they don't have that fear factor. And I'm not saying that the players have stopped playing for Brendan Rodgers, but you could make that argument looking from the outside in because, in that second half, I know we blew them away in 5 minutes in the second half, but there was no reaction, there was no response. And that, if I were a Celtic fan, and thank God I'm not, if I were, I would be very, very angry at that. And I would perhaps aim some of that away from the board and more at the players and the manager because, yes, Charlie Mulgrew pointed out that Hearts beat a Celtic reserve side, which is utter bollocks as well, by the way. That Celtic side was put together for £46 million over the last couple of transfer windows. So, reserves or not, inexperienced players in their back line or not, they should be doing a lot better than that.
While Hearts were celebrating on the pitch after the match, I noticed that Derek McInnes shouted toward the home stand, the main stand, something along the lines of this is our house," and he shouted and he repeated, "It's fucking ours." That level of passion from my manager, I will take that every day of the week I don't give a fuck what Brendan Rodgers or Charlie Mulgrew have to say. Hearts left Gorgie with 3 points, and they played with that kind of level of passion because they've got a manager who instills it in them. That's all I've got to say about it.
I totally agree. I totally agree. I think
What Brendan
another
Rodgers thinks of how we choose to play football means nothing to me. It's his job to figure it out and beat us. He couldn't do it.
exactly. I think there's another point, and it was another tweet that I saw earlier on today, and it was from a John Smith on Twitter at SmithG 1978, and his tweet was, "Annoys me that everyone is putting our success down to the demise of the other two. If Celtic had been amazing and won their previous 8 games, but still lost to us yesterday, they'd still be second behind us by 1 point." So it
Yeah.
shows you. I know the narrative from outside is, oh, it's that elephant up a tree. How did they get up there? Surely they won't stay up
Yeah.
there, kind of thing. There is that narrative, and you know what? Yes, listen. We've always said for anyone to challenge an old firm member at the top of the table, you maybe need a bit of that. You need a bit of luck. You need a bit of good fortune. You need things to fall in your favour, but you also have to do the job, and we're doing that right now. And I said last week on our sort of predictions about the game, I said I want us to give Celtic a bloody nose. I want us to at least let them know they've been in a game and let them know that they're in a fight. And I still feel like that, and I feel like we did that, and we took 3 points off them, which is what you want, And I wrote a rather lengthy post on the Facebook page. If you've not checked it out, please do so. It was an open letter to Scottish football. I still don't know a Hearts fan that truly believes that we can win the Premier League this season, or knows that, or believes that we will win the Premier League this season. But with displays like we're seeing and things that we're doing, it's very easy to dream, and it's hard to say, I don't think we will. I'm not going to sit here and say I think we will win the league. I think we're a little bit far away from that at the moment. But when you hear people like Ali McCoist and people around the game saying, why not? Do you know what I mean? It puts a pressure on Hearts, and it's a pressure we've never had to deal with before. But this team, I have never been more confident in a Hearts group. And like you say, the manager is a huge part of that.
I think he's the
I've
main
never,
part of it, if I'm honest.
but I think,
I think the
sorry
example
to,
he's instilled, sorry, yeah, but like the
no,
example
no,
he instills, that for me is the main part of it. His insistence on one game at a time. They have a confidence going into each game, but they don't look beyond it. And it's very difficult, even if for professional footballers, to not look beyond the next game when they're flying so high. A good manager, though, can instill that sense of we still have the day job to do. Like
yeah,
it's still, it's a professional. We're professional footballers, so we have to show up and do the job. For me, it starts with him. The players have been excellent, but then it loops back round and it ends with him as well. It's the difference between a good manager, a great manager, and somebody who's less experienced, like a few of the guys that we had in charge before Derek McInnes.
yeah,
We're seeing the results of going out there and getting a great Scottish manager who has a track record. That was his ninth win as a manager against Celtic. How many managers in Scottish football can hold claim to have beaten Celtic 9 times?
yeah,
That's
that's true.
astonishing. That was the most astonishing stat I think that I read coming out of that game. Is that was the ninth time he's beat them?
Yeah, I didn't. I
Something
didn't
else.
actually realize. I didn't realize that until you sent it to me earlier on. To be honest, but I think the point that I'll make and sort of how I'll kind of close it and how we'll move on to the next part of the podcast. I think you're right. Derek McInnes is a big part of it, and I think he is the main part of it. But I think from the outside looking in, a lot of the praise has gone to Tony Bloom's investment. A lot of the praise has gone to the recruitment people, which they deserve the praise because you look at the numbers that Celtic and Rangers are throwing around to sign players and wingers in particular, and we pick up this Greek guy on a free transfer, and he comes in and has set the league alight and has been the best player in the league this season for me so far, Kizarides by a distance. Um, we paid 6 figures for Claudio Braga. Rangers are paying 8 million for Chermiti from Everton. The recruitment is a huge part of it, without question, but the wheels don't turn unless Derek McInnes is there, and he has that system and he has that belief and he knows what he can do. And I think it's a big opportunity for him to prove himself as a manager that can
Yeah.
succeed with a bigger budget than he's had at previous clubs. And I think it's, as I say, from the outside looking in, and because there's more eyes on Scottish football now, which is great because, like I said, you see English commentators and you see English content creators, talking about Hearts and saying what's going on in Scottish football. This is odd, and I know it's early, but this is refreshing to see a team 8 points ahead. Like that's a big lead to have. How long that'll be sustained is anyone's guess. Celtic will surely eventually get their cards in order. Rangers, obviously under new management, picked up a win the other day as well. So there is that. The chasing pack are bound to get their cards in order at some point, but we just have to keep picking up the points whilst we can, and where it takes us, who knows. But like I say, it's another step towards the open top bus at the end of the season with a 3-1 victory against Celtic. Was there anything you wanted to bring up before we move on to our St Mirren thoughts?
So we've covered the Celtic match so extensively that we're at the hour mark now. So let's move swiftly along to a very quick preview of St Mirren.
Agreed. Trying to keep these to a slight minimum, or a decent length for you guys and girls listening. But obviously, it's not every day that you beat Celtic 3-1, so forgive us for kind of rambling and having a few wee tangents thrown in here and there. But St Mirren up next. As I said at the start, at the time of recording, this is Monday evening. Hopefully this will be with you by Tuesday, in which case St Mirren will be on tomorrow evening. If not, if there's been any issue, then just disregard this preview and you can leave us there. But St Mirren takes place on Wednesday evening, 7:45 kickoff. The ground that we have lost that this season on penalties in the League Cup. How much does that play on the players' minds, and how much will they want to go there and put that right?
We've talked about this before, Alan. You do not lose on penalties, you go out on penalties. It was a draw.
Fair.
Penalty shootouts are not a loss or a win, frankly. You go through on penalties, you don't win on penalties.
Fair.
It's going to be a massive test of the psychology of this team. Like they will have in the back of their minds that they did not perform well at all the last time that they went to Paisley. It's a slightly different makeup. We have that settled 11 now. We have that system in place that we are, seeing results from. So it'll be very interesting to see how the sort of rematch shakes out. St Mirren are going to remember that they're the team that put us out of the League Cup, and that they have an opportunity to sort of put a dent in that. Like everyone wants to play spoiler, it's great when you get to play spoiler if there's a team that's flying and you get to be the team that brings them back down a bit. So they're going to have the bit between their teeth. They're going to know that more people are watching that match than usual. So I do fancy St Mirren to have a go at us. I think that they will go into the match looking to frustrate us, and I think that they have every chance of doing so. They are very good at that, especially on that pitch in Paisley, and we've seen it before this season. So, yeah, long story short, tough game in the offing this coming Wednesday.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that. I think it's the psychological side of it is a big part of it. I think obviously Claudio Braga missed the penalty that saw us out of the League Cup, so he may well go there with a chance to put that right and maybe score a couple if he can. If he gets the opportunities to score, then I'm sure he'll be looking to do that to right some wrongs there. It is a tough game. Paisley's a tough place to go. We know that, but this team, we've just spoken about the last hour about the mentality of this team and the confidence and the belief that this team appears to have at the moment. That plus the quality that we've got, I wonder if there might be some rotation in the squad. I don't know, and I would not be surprised if we see the same 11, but with the quick turnaround from the Sunday to the Wednesday, there could be an opportunity for one or two to change. But if you're Derek McInnes, do you want to change it? I wouldn't if I could help it. But it'll be interesting to see what the lineup looks like. I'm going to throw a prediction out there. I'm going to go for a 2-1 win for Hearts. I'm going to go for the wheels to continue to roll, the bubble to continue rising and not yet burst. That is my prediction. Would you like to throw one out?
So the one change that I could see happening would be Benny out for potentially Aguirre to get the start if he's fit enough. I do think that Benny, you're pushing it if you try to start Benny in 2 games a week he has had those frailties and those injury issues. The one other one I could potentially see happening would be Halkett out, because of the same. He's had his back problems, and you don't want to push it, because the last thing you want is to, even if he might feel like 75-80%, and like, yeah, I can go in and I can play 45 or an hour. You don't want to take unnecessary risks, because that risk could potentially turn into a longer term issue. You don't want to lose Halkett for any length of time. You don't want to lose Benny for any length of time. So you've got to manage their legs, especially on a pitch like that. So I could potentially see those two come out. Who would come in for Halkett at this point in time? I'm not really sure.
Well,
But yeah, I could
it was nice
potentially
to
see
see.
Ajayu starting.
Yeah, it was nice to see McCart come back on and get a wee run out at the end
Of
against
course,
Celtic.
yeah, yeah.
There's an element of he could come in, depending on fitness levels. But yeah, it promises to be an interesting game in Paisley, and I think the Hearts fans will certainly travel in their numbers, because that's what we do. But yeah, I think we leave it there for this week. I will leave it with one final
Yeah.
thought, because
2-0 Hearts, by the way. I forgot my prediction. 2-0 Hearts.
fair. I will leave us with one final thought, because for weeks and weeks and weeks I've seen on social medias opposition fans suggesting that Hearts are not very good. They're not even good is what I've seen the phrasing. But so put it this way, we're 8 points clear at the top of the Scottish Premiership. I dread to think how far ahead we'll be when we're actually quite good. But
Once
as ever,
Shanklin
folks,
starts his scoring spree in January, yous are all fucked.
just give us the title then, lads. Give us it for Christmas.
Big Chesney's going to be the coup de grace, mate.
I love it. I absolutely love it. But we will see. As I say, trying to keep our feet on the ground. But you know what? Let's go for it. Let's see what happens. Let's enjoy this while it's happening, because we
That's
fucking
it, man.
deserve it.
That's it, man. Enjoy it while it's happening. Don't get ahead of yourself. And, by the same token, don't look back on this later on if things do go south a bit and say, oh, it was always going to go to shit. Just enjoy this, because we don't get to enjoy being 8 points clear at the top of the league very often. It's happened precisely once in our lifetime.
Yeah,
and it did not end well. So just enjoy it for what it is, and just go into the next match, back the lads, and we've seen that when we give them our backing, special things happen. That's what we saw this past weekend. So
absolutely. Well, we'll leave it there for this week, folks. Thanks as ever for listening and watching. You can, as I say, find us on YouTube, Since I Was Young Podcast. Find us on Spotify at the Since I Was Young Podcast as well. This hopefully will be with you day after recording if everything goes to plan. But yes, please do leave us your thoughts in the comments down below. Could it happen? Could this be our year? Who knows? But let's enjoy it. Anyway.
And have you got a heart save going yet on FM 26, and how's it going?
Yeah, put that down there. John and I are still struggling with that, but put that down in the comments and let us know if you've got any tips. Take care.
Catch you later, folks. Bye-bye.
Cheers. Bye.